National Election Commission in Liberia to take the floor.
Which one? This for the next one. I bring you greetings from Monrovia, Liberia, on behalf of the National Elections Commission, Republic of Liberia. We're quite grateful for the opportunity to be part of this all-important conference. My task here is to speak about our own experience regarding the use of technology in the monitoring of the just ended 2017 elections. Just a brief background before I proceed. As most of us will know, Liberia held its first post-conflict elections in 2005. That elections ushered in Africa's first female president through democratic processes. And since 2005, we've held 3 successive general elections and midterm election in 2014. We've also conducted 3 cycles of periodic voter registration. What we do in Liberia is that every time we have general elections, we do a periodic registration. That is, we do a new voter registration, okay? We are yet to reach the stage to do the continuous voter registration. So, our 2005 elections were conducted by NEC as the constitutionally mandated body, but with very high level of technical and financial assistance from international partners. So you can see that within a period of about 12 years, there have been substantive gains where the 2017 elections were conducted by the NEC this time around, but with limited technical and financial support from international partners. The government of Liberia covered over 75% of the election budget. So, for our monitoring purpose, we use the PDA as our monitoring tool. The PDA, usually referred to as a personal device assistant or personal data assistant, is an electronic device, most probably a smartphone or a tablet, where you have the data collection tools such as questionnaires, survey forms, program and install on them. Okay, so they are given to staff which we are recruited, and the staff go to the field with these program questionnaires and collect data on the different activities that they will be monitoring. And also the information collected using internet connectivity, those information are then uploaded to a remote servers and then transmitted to the HQ, where different analyses are conducted to provide useful information for decision making. So for our own process, we began the monitoring of the voter registration center exercise, and the monitoring falls under our M&E section that spearheaded the use of this PDA technology. We hired about 38 election monitors. Administratively, we have 19 sub-divisions that actually oversee the conduct of election across the country. And so these 38 election monitors collected data over the different aspects of the electoral process and transmitted those data to the headquarters. The monitoring teams were also deployed using motorbikes, and more state we have challenges regarding inaccessible terrain, and in order for the staff to be able to cover those inaccessible places, the use of motorcycles were quite a handful in ensuring that those data were collected in a timely manner. And then at the end of the day, the M&E office compiled all those data and did the analysis. And those analyses, as I'll show you, were quite helpful in management decision making. The activities that were monitored included civic and voter education and general outreach, registration center management and statistics, electoral training and deployment of staff and materials, early warning system against potential electoral dispute and violence, polling place management and statistics, and accountability of equipment and materials for voter registration and elections. Given the methodology we use for our voter registration, significant amount of equipment are deployed to the field. And one of the keen concern, both from our partners who initially have helped us obtain those equipment, was the issue of sustainability and also ensuring that those equipment can be used for another cycle of registration. So those were one of the areas that we took keen interest in monitoring to ensure that those equipment were returned after the exercise. So I'll share with you examples of some of the findings. You see here a table showing the trend in the report of malfunctioning VRA equipment. And as we all gather here today talking about the use of technology in elections, we had an interesting situation where we have procured electronic cameras for the use of voter registration. And as usual, delay in funding, limited time with the procurement, challenges in getting through with our procurement board led to the acquisition of this equipment at just about the start of the VR process. Unfortunately, we did not have sufficient time to do the actual testing in country. Most of these equipment were actually deployed to the field without, full testing. And then, so, unfortunately, in the initial week of the registration, we experienced serious challenges with the equipments. A lot of the equipments were malfunctioning. And this almost undermined the entire voter registration process, but thanks to the cooperation of the vendors and also UNDP at that time and the NEC, we were able to adapt measure to restore the situation. So you will see, just in the first week of voter registration, we had over 20% of the VR equipment malfunctioning. So you can imagine voters turn up at the queue and they stay for hours, and the staff could not get the cameras or the printers to work, and people had to turn back and come another day. So the issue of monitoring was quite useful in obtaining this information, and based upon this information, we were able to put in strategy to see how we could remedy the situation. So you see over the period of time with the different remedy that was employed, you could see the reduction in the number of equipments that were actually malfunctioning in the field. This table shows the trend in the VR daily output percentage. The horizontal line that shows intents. So on a daily basis, we're able to compile registration figures as to how many voters were registered at each of the registration centers. With this information, it was able to provide us the necessary information for logistical management in terms of which centers were running out of supplies, which centers needed to be replenished, and so forth. So, the findings were quite useful in management decisions. This chart shows the level of visibility of CV materials, that is civic and voter education materials. Given our own terrain, and we used a lot of visual materials, also taking into consideration the literacy rate. So we do a lot of visual materials, and so this chart shows across the country the level of visibility of these materials. And so you can see from the chart that 44%, which is the highest, had moderate visibility. So under these circumstances, management is able to go back, readjust, and see what improvement we can make to ensure that we have the utmost visibility in terms of our materials. This table shows attendance of polling staff. We usually have about 5 or 6, depending on the number of polling center in the precinct. And so this gave us an idea as to how many staff actually show up on election day. We all know we recruit thousands of staff, and there are a lot of situations wherein some of the staff, for one reason or another, does not show up on election day. This is also tied to payment, because we all know that that the staff that work has to be paid. But there are cases where staff don't show up. There are cases where you have less number of staff reporting on election day. But in terms of payment, if you don't have that information, you actually pay for people who did not work. So with this information, they were quite helpful in showing that not only the payment, but strategies were put in place to ensure that we had full attendance of staff. I look at the challenges. One of the key challenge we had, as also expressed by other speakers, was the issue of the lack of internet connectivity across the country. In order to have this data in real time, they need to be transmitted as soon as possible so that they can be analyzed and decision made so that we can remedy whatever situation we are experiencing. But unfortunately, we do not have internet connectivity across the country, so there were cases where people had, the data had to be delayed a day or two, all right? Also not common is the issue of limited funding. The commission has to make a decision as to whether to put more resources in monitoring or to put more resources in the training of staff. Giving limited and scarce resources, those decisions has to be made. So that's one of the challenges in ensuring that we actually fulfill the monitoring aspect. And then lastly, the issue of mobility across inaccessible terrains. The substantial part of the country, there are difficulty in movement by roads, so there are places where we have to use canoes, we even use motorbikes, and people have to walk for hours to reach the polling center. The picture you see under there is one of the training sections. As the previous speaker in the last section said, the issue of training is quite cardinal because in election there needs to be the application of all the procedure on a consistent basis across. So that's where the issue of training comes in. And so you see a picture of the monitors at one of the training sections. Thank you.